Hi everyone, this is Callie. Thanks so much for being here today. I have a special video. Today is not a card, but holiday crafts from a newer company called Crafted by Concord 9th. Yes, this is a baby company from Concord 9th, and they have special kits with already put together products so that families or friends can get together and craft with all the supplies in each box. So as you can see here, I've got 7 boxes. We've got 3 trees, and it's called an evergreen ensemble with the forest fir, peaceful pine, and splendid spruce. So I'm going to do one of the trees and then show you all 3 trees side by side later. And then moving on from the trees, I'll work on the woodland reindeer, holiday lane houses, beaded and bright garland, as well as the pine cone and sprig garland. So hang in there and we'll get through each kit together. Here I've got all the contents from the forest fir kit laid out. And to start with the glue, which is also included in the kit, you have to remove the little stopper on the inside and then simply replace the tip to use it. To begin, I'm going to add some glue inside the center of this tree base. Then I'll take the dowel and insert it in place, and then this little hollow long brown piece is going to serve as the trunk of this pine tree. I do that first because I want that dowel and the glue to dry and set in place. All 3 tree sizes are going to be completed and put together in the exact same order, except the bigger trees are going to have bigger sets of pines. And they're all numbered on the back side, so you just start from the largest number and work your way to the top. There is a single piece labeled as the topper, so you'll save that for last. In a bowl to the side there, I also have a bunch of spacers. Those spacers are going to go between every 2 pine layers or boughs. And before you start stacking them this way, you're going to want to shape your boughs by curling them. I used a Sizzix shaping tool, but you can easily use another shaping tool or flat edge, or even curl these boughs with your fingers. In fact, I do that on the bigger trees that I worked on because that just seemed easier than using a shaping tool for curling the boughs. So I'm going to continue stacking my tree here using 2 boughs and then a spacer, and working my way all the way up each size of smaller boughs until I get done at the top. And I love the way everything was spaced out and sized perfectly, so you don't have to do any cutting. By the time you get to the top, you'll have just enough space at the tip of the dowel for a final spacer and a tree topper. As you're stacking these boughs, you just want to make sure that they're staggered so that they're not sitting right on top of the same pattern as before, so that you can get a nice variation in patterns as you're working your way up. So here I have finished with my last bough, and now I've added my dowel. Now I'm going to add my tree topper with the good side down because you're going to be folding it up, so you want the good side to be on the outside at the top. I'm going to add glue and adhesive to the inside of that last spacer to help hold everything in, and then I'll fold and crimp together the top of the tree topper here, kind of like a wonton when you're folding up a dumpling. If you've ever done that before, that's what it reminded me of as I was holding these 4 pieces together and cinching it together to hold the tree topper in place, hiding that very last spacer and the dowel at the top. So I'll just hold it in place as I'm pinching it together, and that will complete this forest fir. The forest fir is going to be 13 inches from top to bottom. Then we have the peaceful pine, which is 16 inches, and the splendid spruce, the biggest of them all, at 19 inches. My son Evan, who is 16 years old, came into my craft room when I was done making these and said that he was a big fan. And I have to agree that those trees are a showstopper. Next, I've opened up my kit for the woodland reindeer. There are 3 sizes, and they are made from heavy-duty chipboard pieces in a metallic champagne finish. This is the easiest of all of the kits to put together because there are only 5 pieces for each deer, and they all fit together as a puzzle and are super easy to put together. This project takes less than 5 minutes to put together and is a great addition to any woodland scene. I also want to say that what impresses me a lot about the projects in these kits are the sizes of the completed projects. The small deer is 3.5 by 5.5 inches, the medium-sized deer is 4 inches by 7 inches, and the large deer is 5 by 8. So they are a really good size and will stand out wherever they're displayed. Next up is the Holiday Lane kit. This one is one of my favorites. They are so easy to put together. All of the houses are already pre-constructed, so all you have to do is do some minimal assembly. There is some glue in this, but I just used my glue from my first craft kit, and I never had to open a second tube of glue as I worked through all 7 projects. The kit also includes some enamel dots as well as some 3D foam squares, and that's going to help you decorate the houses along the way. Every house is going to be assembled the same way. With the house laying color side up, we'll want to add glue along the archway or the doorway and then add the door piece over that to adhere it in place. To make each house 3D, there will be a piece like this equivalent in size to the side of the house that's already scored down the center. You'll adhere that to the inside of one side of the house and then use the other side to secure the other end of the house to turn it into a 3D house. To make the roof, you'll simply fold the roof piece in half, then use this tri-folded piece here to adhere along the fold of the roof to form the pitch of the roof. There are score lines on there, so you just want to peel away the backing of one side of that double-sided adhesive. Line this piece up between those score lines along the pitch of the roof, and then repeat with the other side. Remove that backing, and again, line it up against that score line of the roof. And this little triangular piece inside is going to keep the pitch of the roof at the perfect angle so that it sits on the house perfectly. The juniper house, along with the brickyard or red house, is going to have an extra roof piece. It's for decorative purposes and adds fun detail to these roofs. I'm burnishing the score lines here and then removing this adhesive in the center. Then I'll fold it together to close it shut. Then I'll remove the remaining adhesive backing and then line it up along the pitch of the roof, securing it in place. Once the houses are all put together in the same manner, the houses can be decorated with extras. The juniper house is decorated with a pennant flag banner. I'm going to add a dab of glue to each of the pennant flags on the base piece and then adhering the colorful flags to each of those bases, choosing any color arrangement that you want. Then adding glue to the other side, you can adhere this to the house, lining it up with the sides of the house. That completes the juniper house, and I'll repeat the process with the brickyard house. I'll glue on the door and then form my house by attaching the sides together. Then I'll create the pitch of the house using that triangular piece, lining up that piece along the score line of the roof and adhering it between the 2 scored lines underneath the roof. The brickyard house has a scalloped roof detail. I'll remove the backing from one and line up the scallop edges for the top of the roof line. Once these pieces are put together, I can remove the other 2 backings and adhere it to the top of the roof for the brickyard house. To decorate the brickyard house, we're making a string of lights using the enamel dots. So I'm just picking a color pattern and adhering them in a repetitive order until I get to the end over the black dots of the string or base piece. Then I'll turn it over, add some more glue, and then adhere this to the front of the house, again matching it with the sides of the house and roof line. And that's it for the brickyard house. For the Stardust house, we're making a wreath. After assembling the bow by putting that center piece onto the bow, I'm going to curl the leaves of my wreath pieces, and then adding a little bit of glue to the base of the leaf, I'm going to overlap the ends of the leaf with the beginning of the next leaf until I create some dimension for this wreath. Then I'll use some glue to adhere the bow, and then I'll use the enamel dots, 2 of each color, to decorate the wreath. Once those are in place, I'll flip it over and use the 3D foam squares that were included in the kit to add adhesive on the back of the wreath and then attach it to the center of this Stardust house. For the Nectar house, we're making a vertical Noel banner. I'm adhering the white glitter paper to the base piece, then I'll adhere the red banner piece over that. On the back side, I'll use more 3D foam squares to adhere this banner to the Nectar house. This one was super straightforward and finishes the Nectar house. Last but not least, there's the Sea Glass house. For this house, we're making a garland. On the smaller garland pieces, I'm going to curl the leaves just like I did for the wreath and overlap them to form some shape and dimension on the garland. Then I'll add some glue on the sides and attach my bows. Then, using my enamel dots, I'm going to decorate my garland. Since this is the last house in the kit, I'm going to use the rest of my enamel dots and really decorate this garland. Then using some more 3D foam squares, I'm going to attach those to the back and attach this to the house. And that finishes the final sea glass house for this set of Holiday Lane homes. The final 2 craft boxes make garlands. This beaded and bright garland kit comes with pom-poms as well as some wooden beads. You'll also get some natural twine as well as a needle. I've unpackaged all of my beads and pom-poms and laid them out on the table. Now I'm going to thread my needle, and counting 7 inches, I'm going to fold the end in half and then tie a knot for hanging purposes. With the needle on the other end of this twine, I'm going to start stringing my beads and pom-poms. The order goes as stardust, nectar, brickyard, and then sea glass. To string the beads on, I'm going to use the small bead, then the large bead, then the small bead again. Then I'll string on a pom-pom. There are going to be 3 wooden beads between every pom-pom, and I'll just repeat this order until I get to the very end. And as you can see, all the wooden beads and felt pom-poms are already pre-drilled with a hole. So all you have to do is thread your needle through it and everything glides through easily. I'm going to repeat that pom-pom color order with 3 wooden beads in between each until I get to the very end. When I get to the end, I'm going to finish off the garland with 3 wooden beads, just like the start of my garland. And conveniently, there are 7 inches at the end of this natural twine, so I'll just fold the tail in half and tie another knot to create a loop for hanging. That finishes this beaded and bright garland. This is one that's going to be out in my craft room year-round. And sadly, here we are with the last craft project using the pine cone and sprig garland kit. This kit comes with lots of pine cones and foliage leaves, as well as a shaping tool, some twine, and another needle. There are some wooden beads as well, the smaller ones being used for spacers between the pine cones, and the larger ones used as a topper. I have everything opened and laid out, and what we're going to work on first is with the foliage. Each stem has a score line in the middle, and you'll fold that in half, matching up the 2 holes on each side. Then I'll use the shaping tool to help me curl the leaves outward. Once one side is done, I'm going to flip it over and curl the leaves on the other side in the opposite direction. What you'll end up with is a stem that looks like this. Fair warning, there are 80 pieces of these foliage stems, so you're going to have to repeat this process 80 times. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's relaxing work and you're just going to sit there and curl paper. As stated before, there are 2 colors of twine in this kit. You'll want to use the brown twine. The length is perfect for this pine cone and sprig garland. For the instructions on this one, we're going to measure 6 inches at the end, fold it in half to create a loop, and then tie a knot to help you hang your garland. Then the other end of the twine can be threaded through a needle to start stringing the garland. Now I've divided my stems into 2 piles. That's because I want to string my foliage so that it's going in 2 opposite directions. I want my foliage to fan out from the center, so as I'm stringing this through the holes, I want my leaves to be on the end. So I'm stringing through the hole where the leaf is first and then going up to the stemmed end. I'm going to repeat this with all 40 stems going in the same direction. Again, entering through the leafy end, and then finish by going up through the stemmed end. When I'm ready for my second pile of 40 stems, I'm going to enter on the stemmed end, so the opposite end of what I did before. That way the 2 stemmed ends meet in the center. And then I'll repeat that until I get through all 40 foliage leaves for the other end of my garland. Without cutting off any excess twine when I get to the end, I'm going to measure 6 inches from the end again, fold that in half to create a loop, and then tie off my garland with a knot. Remember, everything is pre-measured, so you shouldn't have to do any trimming. With the remaining space on the twine, I'm going to make some adjustments with the foliage, spacing them out evenly. Since I have my foliage going in 2 opposite directions, I know where the center is and can space out the foliage evenly on each side with the foliage going downward. With the garland complete, now I can work on the pine cones. The small pine cones consist of 6 pieces of pine cone layers. I'm going to curl the ends of each pine cone layer and then stack them together with a spacer bead in between each. To do that, we're going to use the natural twine that is included in this kit. We're going to measure 18 inches of natural twine for each pine cone. After cutting off the length needed, I'm going to thread this length through a needle. To help with threading, if you have any fraying on the ends, use a strip of cardstock folded in half with one end of the twine inside. Then use that piece of paper to guide through the eye of the needle. My strip here is a little snug, so I'll trim it down later and make it a smaller strip. Now to assemble a pine cone, I'm going to take a small spacer bead and thread it through my twine length until it reaches about the center. Once I know where the center is, I'm going to go through the same bead on the opposite end so I can secure it and keep it in the center. To start stringing the pine cone layers, I'm going to use both ends of the twine to feed it through the eye of the needle. I'll trim down my piece of cardstock to make it a little smaller so it can fit both ends of the twine through the eye of the needle without any issues. Then I'll start making my first pine cone by adding a small pine cone layer, followed by a spacer bead, then another small pine cone layer, and repeating with another spacer bead in between each layer. So the sizes of the pine cone layers are as follows: small, small, medium, medium, large, and then another medium. Again, you'll want a small spacer bead between each of those layers. When I'm done stringing through all of those layers, I'm going to top this pine cone with a topper bead, and that's the bigger bead from this kit. Then to finish off this ornamental pine cone, I'm going to tie a knot as close to the topper bead as I can. And that finishes one of the pine cones. I'm going to repeat this process with the remaining 6 small pine cones. You'll have excess twine at the top of all of these pine cones, but don't do any trimming yet. That excess twine is going to help you tie these pine cones to the garland that you created before. Now I'm going to repeat the process with the large pine cones. The large pine cones have gold tips on them. So you'll want to curl all of the pine cones and make sure you're curling in the right direction so that all of those gold tips are visible. There are 8 layers to the large pine cone, and I'll string them in the same manner as I did for the smaller ones. I'm going to cut an 18-inch length of natural twine and then string on a small spacer bead. Once it's centered, I'll string through in the opposite direction, keeping that bead in the center of this twine length. Then I'll string on the pine cone layers in the following order: small, small, medium, medium, large, large, extra large, and then back to a large. And I'm still adding a spacer bead in between each of those layers. To make it easier for myself, I've already stacked the pine cone layers in that order so that I don't mess things up. When I get to the final layer of the pine cone, I'm going to top it with that larger bead again, just like I did for the smaller pine cones. And I'll finish off with a knot just like before. I'll repeat this process with the remaining 5 large pine cones. Once my pine cones are made, I can go ahead and space them out however I like and tie them onto my garland. I'm going to start in the center and then stagger some of the pine cones in varying lengths and sometimes in clusters of 2 to create more interest. I'm simply tying them onto that brown twine from the garland and then cutting off the excess once I'm happy with the length and where it's tied. So this crafty project definitely took the longest out of the 7, but it makes such a beautiful, realistic garland. And as a surprise to my viewers, here I am decorating my buffet table in my entryway using all of these craft projects. Making these projects were so much fun, but when they come together to create a centerpiece in your home, it just makes it so much more special, especially when you get to create these with family and friends. I started off with a pinecone and sprig garland in the back, then I added the evergreen ensemble in the center of the table, filled in the space with all the Holiday Lane houses, and then added my woodland reindeer, and then finished off with the beaded and bright garland. I hope you enjoyed this tablescape setup. I enjoyed making this for you, and I hope you enjoyed this long video. If you're interested in any of these products, be sure to check out the links below and use code CALY10 to get 10% off your order. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.